that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, everybody. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Finnell. I am George Harvey, and this is Tom Finnell.
I'm Tom Finnell. And the guy in the background is Brian Stewart. We'll hear a little bit more about him.
Oh, goody.
Only briefly.
Only briefly.
But it's good news.
Okay. Every day I get on the internet and I do a serious check of whatever news is happening. I usually look at a couple hundred articles, at least the headlines of a couple hundred articles. The ones I like go up on my blog, which is geoharvey.wordpress.com. And every week, Tom and I do this show based on the top 20 or so items that are in the blog, and just chat about them a little bit. And by the way, we're going to have another show, also recorded today, which is my pick for the top 20 for the year, which I think will probably appear on Channel 8.
Okay.
Okay?
That'd be good. Yeah.
I have your permission. Yeah. Okay. So I think we might as well just start right in. Wednesday, December 24th. We've got a lot of days going in here because there wasn't any Christmas availability for the studio, and there wasn't any New Year's availability. So
we got two extra days.
We got a few extra days, yeah. Reactor operators at Vermont Yankee were getting ready to close the plants for the plant's final shutdown on the following Monday. Their preparation included training on a control room simulator at the company's corporate offices in Brattleboro. The simulator was an exact replica of the control room at the Vernon plant. Got that from Vermont Public Radio.
Here's a picture.
That's a picture
of the simulator.
Of the simulator.
Which is an identical copy of the real thing.
It's like everything that's in the actual control room is identically copied.
Including the chairs.
Including the chairs. Yeah. I wonder if they even copied the pencils. You know, they're pretty careful.
This article gave me a couple of good pictures of the control room, so I figured I'd make it full screen.
Well, good.
I've been in that mock-up.
In the mock-up.
I haven't been in the real one, but I've been in the mock-up. Yeah. It's only across the street. It's up the street there.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting and very, very confusing. I mean, you know.
Well, I'll tell you something.
It's all lights and whistles and little dials and.
I think that Vermont Yankee should have been closed down, but if I had been an operator, it should have been closed down long ago. Because I don't consider myself a person who you could rely on to remember everything. I have a good memory, but it's a trap, you know, to have a good memory and think that you remember everything when in fact you don't.
So it's an interesting shot, and I'm going to bring this one up.
Oh, good.
This is the control board in the control room.
The control board.
And every one of those indicators there indicates what's happening to a control rod.
Oh, my gosh.
And indicates how much energy is being generated at the location of that control rod.
Really?
And if you will look up there real closely, you'll see that everything is zero.
Yes.
So they took this. Well, this picture's in the mock-up.
In the mock-up.
But in the real room, at what was it?
I don't know the exact.
12:01
something. It was in the early afternoon.
12:01 p.m.
on the 29th.
Everything was zero.
Yeah.
And to me, that's good news. I mean, you know,
I think it's
there
good
will
news.
be repercussions of this that the economy will feel.
Yeah.
But there would be a big sigh of relief to the people that are living within.
With the exception of a few people who are dependent on that plant and have jobs there. That
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know.
Although about half of them, as I understand it, are retaining their jobs at least for a while. And they've all known.
All of these professionals that are losing their jobs probably have new jobs already because they're highly skilled, they're much in demand. And how many nuclear plants are there in America right now?
99 operating reactors.
Okay.
99 reactors.
So, you know, the chances are very high that these guys
Yeah, and there's one reactor that I think may come online this year, so they may bring it back up to 100. And of course, they're going to be looking for.
They're going to be looking for these
and,
guys.
And a reactor typically.
The guys that won't get new jobs are the guys that sweep the stairs and the night watchman kind of guys and those guys there. But they're going to be working for a while. They're going to be
and I'm
still
not
be
so
there.
sure that it's going to be impossible for them to get jobs.
Oh, they'll get jobs, but
No,
I mean,
if at nuclear power plants, you've got to remember these people have to be
well, they got cleanage, cleanage.
They're pretty carefully. Yeah, exactly. So and I go to the NRC every day, look at what's going on, and every week or so, maybe every few days, somebody is caught with too much alcohol in their system or something like that. The point there is that they're very, very careful. The NRC is very careful about this. They don't.
And they should be.
Absolutely, they should be.
This
And when you
take
consider
trivially.
somebody being found out every few days, that's out of a huge population of workers. Huge population of workers. Because I don't know how many people work in nuclear power plants, but I would guess that it would probably be 60,000. Somewhere around there, maybe more. I don't know.
Well, this fellow that we just saw, Stewart, the simulator trainer,
Yeah.
says it's sad to see Vermont Yankee close. Well, I can agree with him especially from his standpoint. But he says you're going to see it in your electricity prices in the spring. Now,
I'm not
either
so
he
sure
is
about
totally
that.
misinformed or he's lying.
Well, he might be. I think people in New Hampshire might.
Well, we'll touch on this a little bit later in his show.
Okay.
But the independent system operator says the grid will not notice Yankee closing.
Right.
But they will notice the closure of some coal plants.
Mm-hmm. That's happening.
It's happening.
And the price of electricity from National Grid is going up 37%. There's one utility in New Hampshire, I have been told, that has its price going up 100%. But its price was
part
very
of
low.
that is fear from what happened last winter with the cold snap.
Yes.
And they ran out of fuel, and everything skyrocketed.
Yeah.
I don't think you could buy a wood pellet in Massachusetts last winter.
It's hard to buy a wood pellet in
Even
Brattleboro right
now,
now. It really is. Okay, the next item, and this comes from Clean Technica. Going solar, according to new research by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, might be a more beneficial economic energy choice in states one does not expect to see at the top of the list. Hawaii and California do top the list, but the number 3 state is not very sunny at all. It is Connecticut.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Isn't it?
Here's a picture of the solar potential
Yep.
throughout America.
And you'll notice
There's
Connecticut
virtually
is
none
glowing
in the
bright
Northeast.
red.
It's interesting. The Northeast is very, very low, and the Southwest is very, very, high.
But there's something about this map that they don't really show you. I think this is the solar potential. And
Yeah.
it does not take into account the fact that PVs, as they currently exist, are much more efficient at cooler temperatures.
No, and this article mentions that.
Yeah.
This article mentions that that's one of the reasons why Connecticut.
And it's one of the reasons why they work well in Vermont.
Yeah.
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 Okay. So we'll go on, I guess. The next article on the same day, which is December 24th, from the Energy Collective. A series of studies from government research agencies and industry in the last few years found that somewhere between 5% and 20% of today's natural gas demand could be met with renewable natural gas, also known as biomethane. It is produced in biodigesters, from landfills, and through other carbon-neutral methods. And
Yeah, I'm finding it here, and I got a lot of stuff on this particular item. But
Vermont, by the way, has, last time I looked, 16 biodigesters. California has 1.
That's kind of upside down, isn't
Isn't it? Yeah.
Now,
But, and this is one of our 144 articles that's in my 144 top articles of 2014.
Well, it's a good article. I mean, it's pointing out that we can make natural gas.
Agriculture Department says that we should have about 11,000 biodigesters nationwide. And right now we have fewer than 300. We can get a lot of natural gas from biodigesters.
Oh, totally. That's exactly what this article is all about.
And those are
There's
biodigesters?
in case you don't know, there's a paragraph here that I like to read because
Oh,
it
go
explains
ahead.
what this stuff is.
Yeah.
Renewable natural gas, which they call RNG, is methane
Yep.
produced from biomass that is cleaned to pipeline quality standards and blended with fossil natural gas. It's also known as biomethane, is carbon neutral, chemically identical to fossil natural gas, which allows it to be blended without any...
In any
It's
quantity.
in there.
It could be
Nobody
100
even knows it's there.
It could be 100%.
It could be 0, 1%, anything in between.
Yeah.
Everything works fine. No
Right.
changes, no
Right.
adjustments. Renewable natural gas is produced from a variety of mostly waste resources. Mostly waste resources. There you go. Including landfills, sewage, farm waste, and food waste. Food waste is going to be a biggie.
There are 26,000 restaurants in New York.
There you go. The major benefits of RNG production are, and this is a biggie too, it takes methane already naturally produced from waste and prevents it from going into the atmosphere.
Right.
So when a cow burps,
Burps. Notice it's burps.
it goes up into the sky.
Yeah.
But if we capture that burp, and by the way, there was something where some inventor tried to capture the burp.
know. I
He had
remember
the cow had a big bag on his back.
I'm a little worried about our humane approach to dealing with animals when you get to that point.
But it prevents it from getting into the atmosphere as a potent greenhouse gas.
Right.
Instead turning it into a valuable carbon neutral fuel.
I have read that the burps of cows produce, I think it's about 100 kilos of methane a year per cow.
They do produce a lot, and
They
right now,
produce a
except
lot.
for this guy with the bag, there's no way to capture that.
Yeah, and that's well, there are ways to reduce it. If you know, a lot of that depends on the diet,
I was going to say what the cows eat.
and
Yep.
yeah, and also on the microbial intestinal, the stomach actually, microflora in the cow. The whole thing is a matter of converting cellulose into something the cow can use, and the methane is produced in the course of doing that. And cows burp a lot. So there we go. I have known
This
cows
particular article,
by
by the
first
way,
name since I was a tiny kid.
have you? This particular article, by the way, is a long and involved article with an awful lot of stuff in there.
Yeah.
If we started talking about it, we'd use up the whole show.
Well, maybe we should do a show on biodigesters. That'd
Well,
be
that might be a
fun.
good idea.
Yeah.
We get somebody in that knows a little bit
Yeah.
about it.
We should probably continue our
One
way.
of the farmers was actually producing cow power in Vermont.
Really?
We ought to be able to figure out who that is. Somebody.
Oh,
local.
there. We could find
Oh, yeah.
the speed program has got a list of biodigesters. We
Yeah.
could probably find the ones that are nearby.
In any
and
case,
find out.
we're not going to talk about this article, but I'm suggesting to people that they look it up on your
Right.
website because
Yep.
this is a very, very good article.
Right, that's geoharvey.wordpress.com, and you look for December 24th, and in the U.S. section. I think it's the U.S. section. It might be there might be a science and technology section. Okay, next, Thursday, December 25th. The Indian cabinet has now officially cleared the way for setting up of 25 ultra-mega solar power projects across India. Each of these projects will have a capacity of 500 megawatts or more, totaling 20 gigawatts. They're scheduled to be set up by 2019 and will receive central government financial support of $649 million.
There's a picture up there of one of these plants. This one exists already.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this one before.
Yes.
But look at it. That is huge.
It's huge.
And you're only seeing part of it in this picture because if you look to the very top of the picture, it goes all the way around the bend. I mean, this is huge. And 500 megawatts is about what Yankee has been putting out.
Well, that's 500 megawatts on a sunny day at noon.
Yeah, potential.
Yeah, and they, we should probably note that these plants, a nuclear power plant could produce 500 megawatts of power at night. This thing won't do it. And the actual output of the power, assuming you can store it, the 20 gigawatts is about the equivalent of 5 gigawatts or 6 or 7 maybe gigawatts of nuclear power.
Full-time power, but that's changing too.
That's changing too.
We're figuring out ways to store, and they're improving the efficiency of these things. So there's a long way to go here.
Yeah. That article, by the way, was from Clean Technica. Our next article from the New York Times is Friday, December 26th. The U.S. EPA has a formula to evaluate nuclear power in its carbon reduction plan. It says 5.8% of existing nuclear capacity is at risk of being shut off for financial reasons.
I read that right off the top, and I said, where are they getting this number?
I have no idea. And
well, the guy who wrote the article has no idea.
For states with nuclear reactors, keeping them running would earn a credit of 5.8% toward the state's carbon reduction goal. And I got to tell you, Mark Cooper, who's a expert on nuclear power, I think that many people in the nuclear industry would like to deny that, but he's at the Vermont Law School, and he lists about a third of American nuclear power plants as being in danger of closing.
A third of them?
A third of them.
Wow. Just for economic reasons?
Just for economic reasons. The nuclear plants in Illinois have been clamoring to get support. The ones the ones in New York State have been clamoring for support. And as a matter of fact, we may have an article in here about Exelon, and I think we do actually, and the fact that they would like support from the federal government for their nuclear plants.
I think that's in this article.
I think it is. Well, it probably is. It's not in the stuff I was reading for the thing.
But that 5.8%, they pulled it out of the
They pulled it out of the air. They pulled it out of the air.
Nobody understands it, but they're going to try and use it.
By the way, just for the sake of argument, let's look at that number, 5.8%, and figure out what number of nuclear power plants 5.8% represents when you've got 99 reactors. It might be 6, but
just
I
under
think
6. Yeah.
It's just under 6.
Yeah.
I don't think this number really works very well.
I don't think so
I
either.
don't think it's an integer. They're saying that some portion of a reactor is going to shut down.
That picture up there is of the plant that has been many, many years under construction, and they're just starting to finish it up.
Yeah. That's the one that TVA owns? I think it's the one.
No, this one is in Georgia. This is the Vodal plant.
Oh, Vodal, yes. Okay.
It's. I looked up the pronunciation of the word.
It's Vodal?
It's a German word, and German would be pronounced Vogtel.
Vogtel. Fogtel, actually. Fogtel. The V is pronounced like an F.
But the local people call it Vodal.
Vodal.
Yeah.
Well, local people are always right.
That's why they're local.
When it comes to pronunciation, they are always right. It's not Warwick, Massachusetts. It's Warwick.
You mean Rhode Island?
Well, there's one in Massachusetts.
Is there? Okay.
There's a Warwick.
Well, in Rhode Island, it's interesting. If you grew up there, it's Warwick.
Warwick?
Warwick. But if you didn't grow up there, it's Warwick.
And they're very strict about enforcing that, too. Okay. Next, from Triple Pundit, the 10th edition of Climate Energy Performance Index has good news and bad news. The index compares the 58 top carbon-emitting nations. It reveals that global carbon emissions have reached a new peak. However, the index indicates that countries having developed a new readiness have recently developed a new readiness to take action on climate change.
It's interesting in this list because the first 3 places are unoccupied.
Yes.
to remind countries of how much still needs to be accomplished to prevent the worst climate change.
Yeah.
That's a clever little dodge there. And the top 2, which are now relegated to positions 3 and 4, are Sweden and Denmark.
Right.
They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing for a long time.
Really, Denmark is going to be, they want to be 100% carbon free by 2050, and that means including transportation. So
by 2050, I wouldn't bet against it, boy.
I wouldn't either.
They're going to do it before
Well,
that.
you know, I think we're going to see bigger changes than people realize by 2050.
And it's not going to be, it's going to be for economic reasons ultimately.
Ultimately, I think it will be.
The economy, economic things are changing.
They are changing. There's no question about it.
Interesting takeaway from this article here is that the two worst countries are Australia and Canada, both of whom have had changes in government and changes in government policy toward the worst.
Yes.
Toward the worst.
Yep.
Australia has now replaced Canada as the worst performing industrial country.
Right.
And we've talked about that.
Many times.
The guy down there doesn't.
I
Well,
don't-
he knows what he's doing. He knows it's called stranded assets. He knows what
He knows that he's worrying about stranded assets. I'm not sure that he knows what he's doing, though.
Well, we're not going to argue that one.
Okay.
I'm in agreement with you, basically.
Yep. Our next item is from Saturday, December 27th, and this is from the Energy Collective. ERCOT, ERCOT, which manages 90% of Texas electric grid, took another look at the impact of 7 EPA clean air safeguards on the electric grid. They now say, they had not said this before, that once power companies comply with the EPA's other clean air protections, the proposed clean power plan's requirements could be met by closing a single coal-fired plant.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of things are happening in Texas that aren't really getting much news.
Yes.
They've been on an energy efficiency kick. They got all sorts of renewables popping up because they have the potential. They got a lot of solar. They got a lot of wind. And investors are building solar here, and they're building wind there.
And
nobody's
farmers,
saying boo.
Yeah, the farmers are realizing that having wind turbines on their land means that they get an income and they don't have to do anything for it. It's another crop, but they don't have to put any effort into it.
Yeah, absolutely. The cows don't mind.
The cows don't mind. The farmers don't mind. They wake up, look out the window, and say, another $5,000.
So it's interesting that Texas has been doing this without any fanfare at all, and all of a sudden they look up and they realize, holy cow, all we got to do is close a coal burning plant,
Right.
and we're good.
Golden. Yeah, absolutely.
Good to go.
Yep, absolutely. And they have people down there, who are very fond of this, the facts of this thing, including the wind power and the solar, and they it's their replacement for all those oil rigs they had at one time, and still have to some extent. Next item.
I
and
don't
this
know
is,
if it's a personal preference or not, but I think I'd rather see a windmill than an
I
oil
would
rig.
much rather see a windmill than oil. Are you kidding? I've talked about looking at the Roscoe wind farm from
Which one?
space. Roscoe, which is in central Texas.
Oh yeah,
634 wind turbines. But when you look at that with Google Earth, you can see the oil pumping rigs that are still there.
Still there.
And many of them have big black spaces next to them where there's been some kind of spill, I think. So, fossil fuels particularly, well, petroleum and every one of the fossil fuels has got its own problems. And oil is just not a very pleasant thing. A friend of mine who is a toxicologist told me in 1975 that he thought petroleum at that time was probably killing 475,000 Americans a year.
Wow.
And today,
And coal's worse.
Huh?
And coal is
And
worse.
coal is worse. Well, we'll get into that farther down the list here. Okay, and the next item from Clean Technica, one misperception in San Francisco is that due to fog, the solar power potential of the city is not good, but this is not true. San Francisco's solar radiation is 93% of San Diego's, and cooler temperatures make photovoltaics more efficient because PV systems operate more efficiently at lower temperatures.
Lower temperature.
And there you go. And that's one of the things about Vermont and compare Vermont or Connecticut or Massachusetts or New Hampshire with New Mexico. Yeah, they have more sunshine, but our PVs, if they're the same models, are going to operate more efficiently.
Well, the article goes into that now, and it says, so San Francisco has ample sunlight, but the limiting factor seems to be more about politics.
Yes.
Okay. The city of San Francisco currently only has about 26 megawatts of solar power. That's ridiculous. For San Francisco to have 26
San
megawatts?
Francisco is not a lot of land mass, though.
It's enough for more than 26 megawatts.
Well, I think all of it has to go on city.
There is
on
a
the
city
rooftops.
proposal that's going to double that
Yeah.
by 2020. Well, that's
That's a good
That's
idea.
moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
However, the solar power potential in San Francisco appears to be far greater than most people know, including San Francisco residents. Rooftop solar could be adopted here in much greater numbers. That's the key in San Francisco. They don't have the room for
I think
large.
it's the only way they can do it unless
Yeah.
they're going to do floating. Then they could do floating.
They could do some floating stuff.
As a
They
matter
got a
of
lot
fact,
of
think about
water
it.
mass there.
You could have a lot of solar panels built on the Golden Gate
let's
Bridge.
go back and look at the picture there.
Or what's the other bridge that goes across the bay? You could put
It's the Bay Bridge.
The Bay Bridge. What a strange name. You could put a whole bunch of solar panels
But
up on the
yeah,
bridge.
look at that picture of San Francisco Bay and the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yep.
There's a lot of water there.
There's a lot of water
So
there.
they could put solar panels on the water.
Yep.
And that's
had
a coming thing. I mean,
had an
that's
uncle
definitely
once.
a coming thing.
I had an uncle once who lived on an island in that bay.
Okay, that's cool.
And it was not Alcatraz, believe it or not.
I'm sorry, I was too slow to catch that
Yeah,
one.
well, a lot of people do catch it. But it was he lived on an island. I think it was called Belvedere Island.
Uh-huh.
He had a beautiful house. Okay, next item from Press Herald. I don't know where the Press Herald is. I would think it might be. Where is it?
It's in
Rutland?
Vermont, huh?
It's in Vermont. The Wyndham Solid Waste Management District says it has 11 proposals to build a solar array on closed landfill in Brattleboro. I've been there. Vermont. 4 of the proposals are from Vermont companies. The system is being considered will have a capacity of, it says here 5 megawatts, but it's actually up to 5 megawatts.
Yeah, it's up to 5. I don't think they're going to hit 5.
They're not going to, I'd be surprised if they came all that close to 5. But it should be at least
They have the
3.5.
potential, and you can thank Shumlin for that. Shumlin
Yeah, absolutely.
pushed this legislation.
As a matter of fact, a person who really pushed that legislation was Peter Galbraith.
Was it really?
Yes.
Good for Peter.
Yeah. It will provide revenues for the district and its 19 member towns.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to realize that Brattleboro doesn't own the Brattleboro Solid Waste District.
Yeah.
It's 19 towns.
It's 19 towns.
But this is a good thing.
Yeah, it is. All right.
Waste District Executive Director, Bob Spencer,
Yes.
tells the Brattleboro Reformer they'll be reviewing proposals and probably interviewing some of the firms.
Right.
They expect to choose a company by March. We got to get him in. Once this happens, we
right.
got to get him in here, and he can talk about what's going on.
Right.
I think the people would like to know. They expect to choose a company by March, and then it goes into the rigmarole that the company has to go through the business of getting permits and all of that stuff. Wyndham Solid Waste isn't going to do it. It's part of the
Right.
proposal that the company,
It-
which
it-
is significant. I mean, these guys.
It's also something the company is prepared to do, and when
Oh, sure, absolutely, absolutely. They know what to do, how to do it.
Exactly. So
So it's an interesting development here in Brattleboro.
it is indeed. Our next item.
Oh, I love this one.
Oh,
I
do you
love
really?
this one.
All right, let me read through it before you break into what I'm saying. Elon Musk announced that Tesla will relaunch the Roadster model.
I want one.
I knew you were going to do that. The new model will have a new battery pack, increasing the distance a car can travel. According to the company, the new battery pack will allow the car to travel about 400 miles on a single charge compared to 245 miles in the current model, and that is from Uncover, Michigan. A name that reminds me
is
of
that where it came from, huh?
Naked Brattleboro, but it's yeah, that's where it came from.
Look at that car.
Is that
wow.
the new Roadster? Or is that
That's-
the old one?
I don't know.
Is there a wind farm in the back there? I can't see it. I don't have my glasses on.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the old Roadster.
Yep. There's
I
a
know
little
that
wind
picture.
funnel.
I
Yep.
know that picture. But you know, I mean, Tesla's Roadster was, and those are
That was
expensive.
awesome.
Yeah, but expensive vehicles.
They're about $100,000, weren't they?
I think they were significantly more than that.
Even more than that.
They're not cheap.
And my rich uncle, who wasn't rich anyhow, has already died. So
Well, I have an older brother who has a he's got a car that he dearly loves, and he
it's a Duesenberg or something
no,
like that, isn't it?
It's an Aston Martin. It's
Aston Martin.
1937 Aston Martin touring car, and it's the only car he has ever owned.
Oh, I'm sure he's had other cars. He just didn't own them.
Nope.
No?
No, he's rented cars, but he's
Oh,
never
okay,
he's
that's
never
cool.
leased one. He's lived all his life in New York City. He doesn't need a car.
You don't need a car in New York
And
City.
the Aston Martin has been restored, but I wouldn't trust him to drive one of those Teslas. He's one of those people who could be one car length behind another car in front of him that's going 50 miles an hour, and it's got its brakes on, and he's speeding up. Or to put it another way, I remember the day when he got his driver's license, and he was cool all afternoon. He was not going to rush out and drive that car. He was not going to show off that he had his license. It came time to go to a party that night, and what was the first thing he did? He ran into a parked steam shovel.
That's kind of hard to avoid.
He wasn't looking at the road, he was looking for the heater. Okay. Let's see now. We're up to Monday, December 29th.
Yes, we are.
And on Monday, December 29th, the New York Public Service Commission approved Con Ed's Brooklyn Queens Demand Management Program. The plan calls for replacing about $1 billion to upgrade 2 substations, which the utility says it would need to do by 2018 with less expensive distributed alternatives. And this is from the Energy
This is a little bit confusing, but what I read about it is they were planning on rebuilding 2 substations, but they've decided that instead of that, they're going to try load management and energy efficiency
Right.
to gain enough so that they can abandon the substations.
Right.
Which
This
is
is
an experiment, really.
It's a very,
but
but you know, the Long
it's-
Island utility, is it Long Island
Long Island Lighting.
Lighting?
Yeah.
They were the ones who figured out that they didn't need to spend $490 million on transmission lines because people were putting up PVs on their rooftops.
Yeah, that was a brain deduction, but it's absolutely correct because Western Long Island, where they operate, is rather sparsely populated compared to Brooklyn and Queens.
Eastern. Oh, okay.
Which is Eastern Long Island.
No, you got them switched.
Huh?
Brooklyn and Queens is Western.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You got me. You got me this time. You got me this time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they got a lot of people to serve, and they're sparsely populated, and their original plan was to connect them all together with wires.
Yep.
And now, well, there will still be some wires, but they're not going to be the same kind of thing,
Yeah.
and people are going to put up PV.
The PV going up on the rooftops and stuff like that. As a nation, our energy demands are declining, even though the population is increasing, and we're in relatively prosperous times.
Well, again, Eastern Long Island is pretty affluent.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the people that own property there don't even live there. It's
Yeah.
their vacation home.
Yeah.
But they got the money to go out there and put those solar panels up on the roof.
And then they've got bragging rights. You know, that's something you get when you have solar panels.
Oh yeah,
Bragging
yeah.
rights,
And I'm
which
sure
are very
among
valuable at cocktail
among
parties.
themselves, at the cocktail party,
Yeah.
they compare they compare their PV systems.
My system is bigger than yours. Right.
But this is a very interesting experiment because Con Ed's sticking their neck out. But Con Edison is not a foolish utility. They've been in this business for a long time. My grandfather used to work for Con Ed.
Yeah?
Yeah, he
I'm
was-
surprised you didn't.
Huh?
I'm surprised you didn't.
Yeah, I did apply it. I wasn't hired.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, they were being mean.
yeah. I don't know if I'd have taken the job anyhow, but they said, no, yeah, we're not interested. They just never answered my application.
Well, let's keep going then. And I think we are up to Tuesday, December 30th. We are, in fact.
Yeah, we're getting there fast. We're halfway
Five-
through. halfway through the hour, but not and more than halfway through the.
Yeah, we can
adjust.
Adjust. 5 energy surprises for 2015: the possible and the improbable. And these are predictions from somebody at an organization.
There's a picture up there of someone who's
right.
surprised.
Yes. Oil and gas production will both go into decline. Oil going below $30 per barrel. A breakthrough in solar thermal. An international agreement calling for binding greenhouse gas emission limits, and oil at the end of the year over $100 per barrel.
Well, let's touch base on each of these in turn very briefly.
Very briefly.
U.S. crude oil and natural gas production will decline for the first time since 2008 and 2005, respectively.
Right.
That's the prediction.
That's the prediction.
Okay, now these are all predictions. None of these are certain.
Yeah.
And the author says he's not too sure that he even believes them. But
Right.
these would be surprises that would have significant effects. The second change.
I think, by the way, that oil
Some of
and
them are
gas
gonna
production will go into decline this year.
Yeah, some of them are going to happen.
I would
There's
be
no doubt about it.
very surprised if it doesn't.
U.S. crude oil and natural gas production. Oh, we just said that one.
Yeah.
World crude oil closes at below $30 a barrel.
I don't believe that.
He doesn't either.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe that
But I
either.
do believe that it'll go down to $40 a barrel.
You think it'll go down as low as 40?
It might, yeah. And the people at OPEC have said they're not worried about it. They are going to be pumping oil just like
They have
are
a
now.
political agenda.
They've got
We
a
have a political agenda.
Yeah.
Part of this agenda is going to hurt American producers because it's going to hurt the fracking industry.
It's going to hurt.
But
the
it's
fracking
aimed
industry.
against it's aimed against Iran. It's aimed against Russia. It's political
I think
warfare.
personally, I think it's primarily Russia.
I think so
But they're
too.
also very pleased to do this because it's damaging ISIS.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. So the next one is developments in thermal energy, and this is a very iffy one. Show that it can solve the storage problem for electricity from renewable energy, and they're talking about solar thermal here.
Yeah.
And solar thermal generates a lot of heat during the day, and they can save that hot. It's a liquid, whatever it is, whether it's molten
salt,
sodium or
typically.
whether it's whether it's salt or even whether it's water.
Yeah.
They can save that. And he's saying this prediction is that somebody's going to come up with a bright idea that solves this problem.
I would say yes, this will undoubtedly happen. Because
Something like this is going to happen.
There's a lot of people out there working on a lot of things.
Absolutely. Something like that will happen.
Yeah, but how significant it'll be, I can't even guess. And of course, it won't be put into use instantly because it takes time to develop these things
And build them.
and build them. Yep.
The next one is a climate. He's saying a climate agreement in Paris is going to call for binding greenhouse gas emission limits.
I'm a little iffy on that.
I think so
I
too.
think it
They're
very
not going to be
likely will.
binding.
It
Something's going to happen,
Something's going to happen.
but there's going to be escape. There's going to be slippery.
Well, these
room.
guys are going to want to. They're going to want to go before their public and say, "We've done something great here."
Yeah.
And I think it's they may be calling for binding limits. I don't know. My guess is that if they call for binding limits, they won't be strong enough. And if they call for
A carbon tax, maybe.
a carbon tax, might work. Yep.
It seems to have worked in the past.
Yep.
I've always opposed it because people can speculate on it.
Yep.
Run derivatives on the carbon tax,
Oh,
but it's
man.
where it's been employed. It seems to have worked. So,
Yeah.
one of the things that he mentions in this particular segment of it is stranded assets. Some progress in the direction of a binding agreement will have the world's energy analysts talking about stranded assets, a reference to the oil, natural gas, and coal that would have to be left in the ground in order to avoid breaching agreed limits on carbon emissions.
Mm-hmm.
That would have significant consequences for the companies whose work is extracting and refining hydrocarbons.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're seeing it now.
Yeah.
We're seeing it now. I mean, these guys have a lot of money invested. They don't want to lose it. But if they have to leave that stuff in the ground, it's lost.
Yes.
I wouldn't be too surprised to see that they wind up with some sort of government subsidy for those stranded assets.
Well, you know, they've already got government subsidies. Why don't we just say, look, we're going to stop giving you subsidies for producing this stuff, and instead we'll give you exactly the same subsidy for a few years as a
to keep it in the ground.
To keep it in the ground.
We used to pay farmers for not growing wheat. Why don't we pay utility
I
or
remember
pay these
teacher
guys
of
for
mine-
not producing
yeah,
oil?
I remember a teacher of mine who was absolutely livid because he had read a thing saying that somebody had bought 640 acres of desert and was getting a certain amount of money, you know, $100,000 a year or something like this. And this would have been about 1960 for
not
growing
not
cotton.
Well, the last one here is the opposite of the second one above. After the oil crisis, or the oil goes down to $30 a barrel,
It'll
it's
go
going to go
back
back
up.
up to 100.
Yeah.
And I see something like that happening.
I don't-
Once they accomplish
Yeah.
part of what they want to go back and start keeping that
making
money.
The question that I've got is how soon are they going to get their political goals met? And we won't know. We won't even be able to guess that because we don't know exactly what their goals are.
In this article, he says that by the end of the year.
Well, I'm thinking that it might take longer than the end of the year, and I'm also thinking that when it goes up, I'm not expecting it to stop at $100 a barrel or anything close to it. I honestly think it'll go to 150.
It could very easily. It could
And,
very
you know,
easily.
that's kind of
Absolutely.
scary when you
Yeah.
consider the implications. But we've said this before to people. This is not a good time to buy an SUV. You
No.
know, you can't just look and say, "Wow, the prices
Prices are low. I'm gonna buy one,"
I'm going
right.
to buy an SUV," because a year from now, that SUV might be hard to drive. We should keep going.
I think we should. Yep.
Energy Matters gave us this thing. 2014 saw new records for German renewables, which produced 25.8% of the year's power. Wind power hit a new peak of record of 29.7 gigawatts on December 12th. Coal-fired power in Germany during 2014 was 10% less than in 2013. Gas-fired power plants dropped to 9.7%, and I'm not sure what that means, but I think it's 9.7% of the total. But the point is both coal and gas declined, both rather heavily, while nuclear's share increased by 0.5% to 15.9%, which is probably just because of refueling cycles.
Well, we've talked about Germany a lot.
Yeah.
They're setting a standard for the world to follow. This
Yep.
energy Wende was a very good idea.
I think so. And it seems to have been working very well, despite what a lot of people are saying. The wholesale price of power in Germany has gone down 30%, and the grid is more reliable than it was. So I don't know how you can
Win-win
complain.
situation.
It's a win-win. The thing that causes the power bills to go up is the fact that some of this is being paid for by taxes, and of course what that does is it induces people to put their own power systems on their own roofs in order to avoid buying power altogether.
Here's a graph so you can see what's going on in Germany as of last year, as of a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And this is what is installed capacity.
Oh, okay.
So we got uranium, nuclear on the left, we got hydropower on the right, and solar is the biggest. Wind is next biggest.
Yes, I can believe that.
Gas is next biggest after that. Hard coal, brown coal. Biomass is quite small.
But biomass is off on the right.
Yeah, it's off on the
Yeah.
right. It's quite small.
And biomass is one of the fastest growing of the groups.
Well, they got a lot of biomass in Germany. I did read that there's a lot of small farmers growing canola.
Right, which is being converted
And
into.
right in town, there's
Yeah.
a small refinery that
That's
converts
right.
it into oil.
Yeah, and that's.
And of course, once it's oil, you can use it for cooking, you can use it for
Right.
driving cars.
You can use it for heating your house.
Using
in your
for
oil
heating, yeah.
burning furnace.
So they're moving in that direction,
Yeah,
and
they
they
are.
have been for a long time, but it's distributed,
Right.
it's small.
Right. And of course, one thing, again, we've said this many times, but the fact that solar has the highest capacity in the chart doesn't mean that it's going to be producing the most electricity because it's got a low capacity
This
factor.
is capacity,
Yeah, and the capacity factor, you should, in order to know what the likely output of these things is, you'd have to for each one, you'd have to multiply it by the capacity.
And I
factor.
think there's something else going on here in Germany that they're not talking about much.
They're
burning more coal than they're talking about because they're exporting that energy. They're selling it outside of Germany.
Yes.
So it doesn't count.
It doesn't count. It's being shipped to Poland and France.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, indeed. Okay. Now, the next item that we have, and I got this from the Washington Times, and I'm sure
I
that
saw
it's
that.
correct.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. I occasionally get an article from the Reformer, but I don't like getting articles from the Reformer. And the reason is not because of the Reformer or anything that it says, but the fact that I would like people to be able to go to these links and find that they work after a week. And the Reformer disconnects them after a week a lot of the time.
Yeah, they do. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I don't know about these other ones, and the Washington Times article might be disconnected after a week too. But I'd rather have it take a chance on something that will last.
Well, let's no longer keep everybody in suspense about what we're talking
yeah.
about. So,
Vermont Yankee nuclear power plants stopped sending electricity to the grid on Monday after producing a total of 171 billion kilowatt hours over its 42-year lifetime. Yes, it is. The shutdown came just after noon as the plant completed its 30th operating cycle when workers inserted control rods into the reactor's core and stopped the nuclear reaction process.
during that same period, over the years of its plant, the plant provided 71.8% of all electricity generated in Vermont. That's not surprising.
Yeah, but
35% of the electricity consumed in the state.
yeah,
So right from the beginning, they've been
right.
shipping it all around. So people who believe that Vermonters are dependent upon Yankee energy, they never have been.
We have been, Tom, and that's the reason why the lights went out when that happened.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Neither did I. Oh dear.
It's interesting.
It's the end of an era, except for the fact that it isn't the end of an era because the plant has to be decommissioned. And
By the way, I referred to this up above when we saw the guy from the nuclear operating station, and
Right.
he said electricity power bill is going to go way up.
yeah,
This last sentence here is from Marcia Blueberg. She's a spokesman for ISO New England.
Yes.
That's the system operator. That's the people that
they're
controls
the people
the
who
grid.
probably would be the most likely to know.
Well, it says here they manage the regional electrical grid. Said, this is Marcia now, said the loss of power for Vermont Yankee wouldn't pose a problem, but the region faces long-term challenges from the loss of a number of older power plants. We've studied the power system in that area. We determined that the regional power grid can be operated reliably without that resource, that's Yankee.
Yep.
Bloomberg said of Vermont Yankee. However, the bigger picture is that the region is seeing more and more retirements of non-natural gas-fired generation, and that's a concern.
And they are also seeing at the same time, Cape Wind has finally been approved.
That's a biggie.
That's a big one.
That's a long time coming.
There's another one which is off the shore of Rhode Island, coast of Rhode Island. I forget which one it is, but there's a number of offshore wind farms.
There's a tremendous potential out there.
And then there's Massachusetts and Connecticut have got huge numbers of PV, tiny PV plants all over the place.
Which we don't even count.
We don't even count them. And one of the things that I was doing a little research on this for one of the articles in Green Energy Times a number of months ago, and I came across a statement which was from an old newspaper, not that old, a year old or something like that, and it was talking about the number of applications for PV systems that were in Massachusetts at that time. It might have been over a year ago. And it said that Harvard, Massachusetts had 76 applications.
We've talked about Harvard, yeah.
Harvard is,
it's a little bitty town.
I wouldn't even call it a town. It doesn't even have a center. It's just a collection of, the center of Harvard is kind of a collection of houses that are closer than 100 yards to each other. It's basically farmland. And the people, but 76 people had applications in for approval at the same time.
I don't think that's a coincidence.
No. And the article also said that at the time the article was written, every single community in Massachusetts had at least one PV system in it. And as that's built up, that's going to start having an effect, and we're going to see wind turbines having an effect, and we'll get into that in the extra edition.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay, the next item. On Wednesday, December 31st, a new report from the consulting company Accenture, a digitally enabled grid, that's the name of the report, clearly states that if the utilities wish to maintain a market share similar or comparable to today's, the companies will need to, quote, fundamentally transform their business models, end quote. Their revenues will decline by as much as $123 billion a year by 2025 if they don't.
That's what we've talked about this.
Yeah,
in my own words, we've said, the utility model had served us well for 100 years. And
absolutely.
It did.
Yeah. And
it's
Green
over.
Mountain Power is right
It's
on the
over.
forefront of that conversion. It's an interesting thing to see.
The graphs here are kind of confusing. I'm going to skip right over the first
Okay,
one
well,
here.
let's do that. Let's skip
it's-
the graphs.
Well, we can look at these. This first one is really kind of confusing.
Yeah.
But the second 2 and 3 is not. Figure 2, which is the one on the left,
Yes.
is the revenue reduction based on reduced load,
Right.
how much it could be.
Yes.
And you see the green one is the protected, if we stay on the same path.
Right.
The blue one is what it looks like they're going to accomplish using demand distribution.
Right.
And the bottom one is, they call it a perfect storm.
Yeah, I think this. There's some huge opportunities here for the
For the people with their
electric-
heads on right.
Yeah, with their heads on it.
Absolutely.
And demand response is just incredibly important. In fact, this is one of the things that I came across today in today's news, where they were talking about islands in the Orkneys off the coast of Scotland, where people are going to be getting free electricity because the wind turbines will be producing more than the grid can hold at certain times.
Yeah.
So rather than shutting the turbines down, what they want to do is keep the turbines going and use those turbines to heat things up that are on the island, so that they aren't the extra load is not taken by the grid, which means that
So it's a form of storage.
it's a form of storage. But the people who have got electric heat, electric hot water, other electric things that can be turned on automatically in a smart grid system will be getting that power for free.
Exactly.
And
we talked about this. One of the units sort of looked like an air conditioner, but it was for storing heat.
Yeah, that might be. It might be. Was that last week?
Oh, no, it was a couple of weeks back.
Weeks
It was
ago.
a couple-
Well, this is home stuff.
This was in a home, yeah.
This is people in homes, and this is like an ordinary hot water heater, like an ordinary person would have in his home.
Okay.
What they're saying is, you can have the power for this for free because you're close to the wind turbines, and we don't want to shut the wind turbines down. So when the grid is overloaded, we'll just give you the electricity.
So you heat your hot water when we give you the free power.
That's right.
Which is what everybody's going to do.
And it's going to happen almost every day.
And it's going to be automatic.
It's going to be automatic. It's almost like, I've known people who had solar hot water, and they love the fact that they don't have to spend money. But of course, it means that every once in a while they have to go for several days, during which they have to spend 50 cents or $1 a day just to heat up that water heater.
Yeah.
And in this case, if these people had solar hot water and this, they'd probably have hot water all the time.
I'm sure they would. Yeah, absolutely. And it wouldn't cost them anything.
And it wouldn't cost them anything. And you know that they would appreciate that, because people who live on islands in Scotland are likely to appreciate that.
Well, the Orkneys are too far away from the mainland to get piped power in any
Oh,
case.
absolutely they
So
are. Did-
they're closer to Norway, I think.
No, that you're thinking of Shetland. Orkneys are. No, you're right. Shetland and Orkneys are
Yeah, they're up
both
there.
north.
They're up there.
Yeah, both north. Difficult, cold, windy.
I bet you they're nice to visit, though. I bet.
I've known people who went there and loved it.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved it. Okie dokie. Where are we here?
We're on flow battery technology.
Flow battery technology. By golly, this is yesterday. Thursday, January 1st. It's our second to the last article. An affordable flow battery based on high-capacity organic electrolytes is currently under development by researchers at Ann Arbor-based
Vinazine.
Vinazine Inc.
Sounds like medicine.
It sure does. It reminds me of, what was that stuff called? Seratan. Seratan is nature's spelled backwards.
Nature's, yeah, right. There's a good picture of a flow battery there.
Yeah. In
And
partnership,
that just fascinates me.
oh yeah,
They just pump the liquids back and forth.
Right, and they could theoretically, there's no limit to the amount you could use a thing.
Well, these things could be small.
Yes,
Some of them are small enough to mount in a car,
yes,
and they could be big enough to cover an acre or more.
yes. And they could be grid storage. They could be home storage. They could operate your cars.
As far as storage is concerned, this I think is this is going to be heavily utilized in the future because it just makes so much sense.
Yeah, what they're doing, of course, is they're using organic electrolytes, and organic simply means that it's carbon-based
Yeah,
compounds. It doesn't mean that they come from plants.
organically grown crops.
Exactly, but it means that
They're carbon based.
yeah, plastics that come from petrochemicals are called.
They were organic. That's organic chemistry.
Organic chemistry, and organic chemistry is one of the more fascinating things.
It is. Yeah.
It really is, but man, there's so much of it. If you counted the names of chemicals in organic chemistry as words in the English language, they would dominate the English language.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be half the language.
Yeah.
And I have seen words with my own eyes that were
17 syllables.
syllables, 17 lines of type.
Wow. Wow.
Okay, that's from Clean Technica.
The interesting thing here, and it is mentioned,
Yes.
is prior to the development of these organic compounds, they have been using vanadium-based
Yes.
solutions, which
Yeah.
have been very expensive.
And we've talked
So this
about
has
that.
reduced the cost of building one of
Right.
these things by a huge factor.
Yes,
And it's going to mean that these things are going to start popping up.
they're going to start popping up if this thing is developed, which it very likely will be.
It will be.
Our last item comes from the Albany Times-Union. New York's residential kitchens and yards, supermarkets and restaurants, of which there are 24,000. I was wrong. It wasn't 26,000. It was 24,000 in New York City. 600 wastewater treatment plants, $3 billion food processing industry, farms, and many landfills make up millions of tons of waste every year, and it can all be used to produce renewable natural gas.
It is being used. There's a picture of one of them now that's active.
Yeah.
This is a very large wastewater treatment plant.
We talked about
And
this
those
earlier in the show.
big balloons you see there are for storing the natural gas that they're producing.
This is going to be an interesting thing because these guys, in these plants, the biodigesters and the little plants that could be all through the countryside, are going to be producing gas that can be used, can be stored.
Yep.
It can be converted
Yep.
into other things, ranging from
Fuels,
gasoline
any kind of fuels,
to
yep.
plastics,
Liquid fuels,
I mean,
plastics, yep.
And we're going to be seeing a lot of this. And I honestly think that estimate that we could get 5 to 20% of our power from these things may be low.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it is.
So I think maybe, Tom, it's time for us to say goodbye.
We got about a minute. We've got less than a half a minute left. So
But
I guess
Roland has to
I
do
think-
his thing. So
I think you're right
we
there.
will
Let
say
me
goodbye to everybody, and
let me
we're
pull
going to
us
do
up
another
so we can
show.
say goodbye.
Yeah, we'll do another show, which will be the top 20 energy news stories for the year, and that'll be on Channel 8, I hope.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
Good. See you
Bye,
later.
everybody.
We spin and we toil, we work all day, sowing and reaping, we store goods away, so we can be dressed well on the day that we die. We dig and drill and waste what we find, break up the earth, leaving little behind, but we will grow lilies in the by and by. I want to point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. can stay lovely still.